Hi, everybody. My name is Ihab Darwish, and we are going to talk today about the Foundation of Information Technology course. This course is made up of five sections, section 1 through 5, and each section we will have or we will cover two chapters. The first chapter that we'll cover in section 1 is Information Technology Key Concepts. So it's about the key concepts related to the information technology, the principles of information technology. Then we will be moving on forward and discuss the computing and information technology building blocks. There are four of them, and we will continue in section 2 with chapter 3 by talking about the first IT building block related to the information technology, that is the hardware. Then in chapter 4 we will talk about the second IT building block related to the software. Then in section 3 we will begin with the third IT building blocks, that is the communication and networks. One of the major applications related to the communication networks will be discussed in chapter 6, which is about the internet and the World Wide Web. In section 4, we have two more chapters, which is chapter 7 and 8. 7 is the last building block, or the fourth IT building blocks, that is the data. Then we will talk about enterprise database management and data warehousing in chapter 8. The last section has also two chapters. The ninth chapter is the e-commerce and applications and information technology security. That's the last chapter of the course, Foundation of Information Technology. I feel that security is very important and should be covered as one of the major topics related to the principles or foundations of information technology. Let's begin with chapter 1 of this course. Chapter 1 is Information Technology Key Concepts. Now there are three major topics that will be discussed in this chapter. The first one is Information Technology Key Concepts. So what are those key concepts that is related to the IT or the information technology? Then we will be talking about the current technologies and how they are shaping our industry. Then the last topic, or the last objective, will be the emerging technologies. Okay, and we begin with some kind of introduction about information technology. We need to understand what IT is about. Information technology, or IT, is about the different kinds of technologies that is involved in the transmission of information, or processing and storing and transmission of information. And those technologies includes the hardware, the software, the communication that is required for processing these type of information. So you can consider that information technology is the link that links different corporate environment, different businesses, different industry that will form our global market. So we are in the global market. IT is the foundation of communication that is important in shaping our industry. Therefore, we need to understand, of course, the different blocks that is involved in the IT, and there are four of them. There are four main blocks, or four main components that is related to the information technology. And the first one is the hardware, that consists of different computers and the devices, the components that are needed to process different data. Then we have the software, or the program that is needed, or that needs to be installed on the hardware. Okay, and finally the data communication, the communication that is related to the voice and data communication that is related or involved in manipulation of data. Let's begin with the first topic, which is the information technology key concept. So in this topic, we discussed the key concepts related to information technology. So the foundation of information technology course definitely will focus on how IT is being utilized by people in conducting their business, their daily operation, and what kind of impact that it does on their personal lives. So the first question here is, what is information technology? So information technology, if we can define it, it's the term that is used to cover all advanced technologies in manipulating and communicating the information. So information technology is about processing, is about distribution of data that is related or using the computer hardware and software and telecommunication and digital electronics. So what is information technology in the digital world? In the digital world, IT has become, of course, more available in both the front end and the back end. So it's been utilized by different type of people, different type of workers that will, in order to streamline their business and their activities. There are more employees are now dependent on IT for accomplishing their tasks and their duties. Even though managers have become involved, business managers have become more involved, like the IT manager and the other business managers, in the decision process to ensure that their investment or the investment is done properly and their effective system has been utilized in a good way. By the year 2000, there has been so much spending done on IT that almost more than half of the annual capital expenditure that was of businesses that was spent on IT, especially or specifically in the developed countries. Now we move on to the concept of IT. Now, based on the IT different blocks that we mentioned, that includes software, hardware, communication, network, and data, we can say that the IT is about storage, retrieval, manipulation, transmission, and receipt of digital data. So the nature of information is we need to look at it from two different perspectives, which is the nature or the source of information, and then we need to look at it from the management of information. So we need to see what type of source, how the data is being captured, and how it is being verified and stored for effective use. And then we need to look at the manipulation, processing, and distribution of information. So how the data is being manipulated and processed and distributed to the appropriate people. Then we need also to look at the security attribute of the data, how to keep the data secured. And we need to look at the network design that is involved in sharing information. Furthermore, of course, the information system strategy that will be or must be considered to be in alignment with the business strategy. So the IT infrastructure should be put in place to support the business drivers, the business strategies, to ensure that the future goal and objective of organization are being met. And of course, the organizations, they are in business in order to make sure that they generate profit, they generate good services to the industry or to the public, and make sure that their objective and have been met and achieved. So the information technology components, as can be illustrated from the diagram in figure 1.2 here, it's about computers, that is software, hardware, it's about communication networks, it's about the know-how, that is the know-how about the technology, the know-how about that involves the people, that involves the application and procedures. There are some basic definitions that we should cover here. That we need to look at in section 1.2.1. The first one, of course, the computer. The computer is, as we all know, it's a device. It's a system. It's an electronic system that consists of devices, consists of different components. Okay, that is being given instructions or to accept certain instructions in order to process and store and retrieve data. So it's made up of the different hardware and software components that constitute the computer. Now, the hardware, as the term says, the hardware, it's related to the associated equipment that will make up form the system or the computer. Now, the software, we have two terms here that are close to each other, which is the software and the program. Now, we need to be able to distinguish between them. Software is about the instruction or set of instructions that controls the computer or communication. So it's like the application that will be implemented on the top of the hardware that manipulates or control the computer system or communication system. Now, the program, it's a set of code. It's a block of code. It's an instruction list that could perform certain tasks in order to produce certain results. Okay, and of course, there are different programming languages that exist to support that. The data that consists of raw data that could be figures, text, or any type of form of data, voice, images. Now, the data itself, it is meaningless if it's not put or organized properly. That's why there's a difference between data and information. So information, it's an organized way or a meaningful way of looking at the data or useful interpretation of data. Knowledge is awareness. Knowledge is understanding of a set of information and how that information can be put in for better use or for the best use. Now, the information system, this is something that, every organization should have an information system or business information system that it supports its infrastructure, that supports its business, its workflow, it's how they generate or they conduct business. So that's why we call it's a management information system. Is a structured way to solve their problem and their processes or their department or their business. Then we need to look at the different types of computers. There are four major types of computers that started. The computer started back in the 1950s with the mainframe environment, and it was a huge environment. It was developed by the IBM, and then in the late 60s, the early 70s, the mainframe has been downsized smaller into a mid-range computer and like the Digital Equipment Corporation systems, and it was adopted by many universities. And then we had, of course, the microcomputer in the 1980s and beyond, where became more smaller devices, and that formulated a smaller equipment. Of course, we have the supercomputers that is used to conduct certain type of calculation that is require high speed, high performance processing power. Microcomputers in general technically speaking, it's the computer or the device that is being used by schools, universities, businesses, homes. Okay, and there are 5 types of those microcomputers that we have been using for the past 20 years. There's a desktop computers, there is tower systems, laptop, notebook, and palm top computers. We can move now to section 1.2.2 that is related to the information technology functions. There are 9 functions that is related to the information technology. The first function, it begins with capturing. So it's actually, we start with capturing because we are talking about information technology and there are functions. So it begins with capturing. So we need to capture data. Now the data that is being captured should go into a process of verification. So the next step, the next function here is verifying. Then after verifying the data that is being captured, then we need to do some kind of processing or manipulation to this data. And that's why the third function is considered to be the processing and manipulation. Then we need to do storing this information into the system. That's why the storage, and then being able to retrieve the data. So storing and retrieval, this is the 4th and the 5th functions of the information technology. Then we need to be able to do any update on the data if there's any need, and of course being able to put this data into different environments. That's what we call it, reproducing the data data. Then we want to be able to transmit the data using electronic mail or some kind of media, some kind of communication channels, by using transmit and communication function. And finally, we need to be able to generate output, and that's the generation data. Now here on this page, it is explained in more depth. That is the capture. So the capture is the process of compiling or detailed record of activities. So you capture, then verify. The verifying is the operation of checking or validating the data to ensure it was captured and recorded correctly. Processing, manipulation, and there are actually 4 stages to processing and manipulation. The first stage is classifying. So in processing manipulation, we need to classify the data in order for us to arrange it or to sort it. So we classify the data. So we put the data into different classes, different size, different types, okay? And then we need to arrange or to sort the data according to the different criteria. So we need then to perform some kind of processing or calculating on data. So it could be arithmetic or logical calculation or manipulation. Finally, summarizing is reducing the data into logical that could make sense to us. Then after processing manipulation, then we move into, of course, storage. Being able to store the data, and then a process of retrieval and data update that consists of making changes to the data, and finally number 7, which is the reproducing or duplicating the data from one medium into the other, transmission, communication, and generation functions. We finished the first topic here. Then we move on to the second topic, that is the current technologies that involve computer hardware. And we need to understand that the current technology has improved since the early introduction of the IBM mainframe system since in the 1950s. Now the computer systems are they are faster, they are cheaper, and they became like a mobile devices. Okay, so that's why we can say that computers have become smaller and faster. Hardware prices have dropped drastically. Now you can buy a computer for a few $100s, and high growth in small mobile devices is the new standard nowadays. So by looking at the diagram, we have the early introduction of the IBM mainframe system back in the 1950s, and then the microcomputers in the 1970s, then the IBM personal computer that was initiated in the early 1980s, which is 1981, which was started with the XT-based machine, and then the AT-based machine in 1983 and 84. Then we have the personal digital assistant, or PDAs. It was developed in the early 1990s. It was used by different vendors that involves shipping agencies and others. Then we have the laptop computer, and of course this is the desktop. It's outsells. It's sold in great or more than the desktop in the year 2005. So now laptop is the de facto here. It's a standard. And then smartphones, of course, introduced in 2007. Now it's also become like an add-on to the laptop, an add-on to the notebook. So it is something that is available nowadays. Now the current technologies in this section, which is we have the computer software, integrated options, downloadable on social media. So we need to look at how the current technology now it became more integrated. It became downloadable. We have the social development side of the technologies. So integrated means that that becomes more standardized. There is more standardization here. There are some operating systems have become to be de facto or standard, like Microsoft Windows, Microsoft Office, the Internet Explorer. There are many systems that utilize enterprise system. For example, there are the electronic health record in hospital, so that becomes now more integrated solution. And now also that we need to look at the technologies in a sense that they became more downloadable, so they are almost bit-sized software programs that can be downloaded to the smartphones, and that different application stores available for smartphones. Now the download speed also has improved drastically, has increased the capability of moving large files and downloading by users. The social aspect, which is the growth of the web technology, the social media like the Facebook, the LinkedIn, and many other websites that provide social sites. It's also used by companies for marketing purposes and branding activities. Collaboration tools connect also employees across distances. Now, the second, if we look at 2.2 here, which is a current technology that is computer networks have become more high bandwidth, wireless, and cloudy. So if you look at the way that the infrastructure has evolved, it started with ARPANET back in the 1960s as a governmental project, okay, and then it has moved on. It has established a way for us to start deploying networking and communication with each other. And the real application was in the 1990, where this kind of network has been evolved into form what we call it the World Wide Web. And then here we had in the early 2000 era, we had also high-speed internet connection has evolved that made a lot of things possible, made the internet usage at a great pace, and the number of internet users actually has exceeded 1 billion people in 2005. And here also now we are the era of wireless and internet devices that is more becoming common in many different locations in our area. So we can say that there are high demand for high-speed internet access. Wireless technologies now replace the hardwired lines, and you can say that the use of internet has becoming more available, and that's what pushed for cloud computing and the concept of shared services that exist in our days. The last topic on this section here, which is the emerging technologies, we need to look at different ways that how businesses use IT to compete. Now, the emerging technologies. Now, the competition is on the low cost. As we know, the companies are competing by being low cost producer for good or service. In other words, they have to deploy the system or the IT in order to compete, in order to provide services for others. That is at lower cost. That is available all the time. And that's why the concept of IT is to be able to automate the transaction time, to provide faster processing time, to provide shortening the order cycle time, to provide operational information for decision making. This is the advantage of information technology, and this is how businesses they are emerged to utilize this kind of technology. And also companies or organizations, they need to differentiate themselves from others. That's why by competing with other businesses, by offering products or services that customers prefer due to superiority. So this is by doing that, they give the sales personnel information to better serve customers. Because the IT, when you have an information system available, when you have data available about different competitions, different markets, so you can compete with, you can provide this to your sales, so you can provide better services to your customers. You can provide also just-in-time supplies for customers, because that could be facilitated using information system and inventory-based system. We can also utilize creating new information-based product. We can allow product customization by the consumer. So, in other words, the businesses can really differentiate themselves by utilizing low cost and emerged technologies in their industry. Now, emerging technologies also new ways for people to work using IT. We have also telecommuters nowadays. We got virtual teams. So, and the telecommuters is basically those are the individuals who do their businesses from home using mobile technologies or network connections to work remotely. Now, of course, there are pros and cons. Pros, this is become more flexible. Their life work could be balanced, and the cons, of course, this makes they could feel that they are being isolated, and there are some concern maybe that they could have that they are isolated or they are away from the business. Now, the virtual team now also has evolved that provides or being able to formulate a project team using virtual team. Those team could be available everywhere in different parts of the world, geographically separated, and there's of course pros and cons. Pros that you can include different workers that they have different skills from different parts of the world in a certain project, so you can have specialized skills from different business units, and this could improve the capability of the project, or could improve the function that is intended for. There is cons for virtual teams, which is include the coordination across the team members. It becomes more difficult, but I'm sure that by time people will master or will become really telecommuters, and they will master a virtual team, and they will be able to manage and coordinate different projects remotely. By this, we have reached the end of section 1. Thank you very much.